Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Country Education Partnership Free Professional Development Series. This is the third in the summer series. My name is Brendan Ryan. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Welcome everybody to today's session. This is the third session in a three-part series focusing on student welfare. It's a Q&A session involving the first 2 weeks of this series, which has a focus on online safety and child abuse awareness. It's my pleasure to introduce the Chief Executive of CEP, Mark McCauley, to provide an update.
Thank you, Brendan. Excited about today's session. Just a quick update on one of our major events that is coming up, the Energy Breakthrough event in Maryborough, November 19th till 23rd. That involves around 2,500 student participants, and the town grows in size to the extent of around 10,000 people during the event. So it is a major event, and we partner with the Central Goldfields Shire to bring that event. CEP are also the child safety officers for that event, mainly Morris and I, which considering there's camping and a 24-hour event, Kristi, that has quite a few levels of risk and complication that we have to try and navigate through, and we use sort of our school spirit to do that, but there are some risks that are difficult to mitigate completely, given that the public can just roam sort of in and out. Anyway, so that's our challenge. What I did want to mention about the event is that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in Sydney, there will be a major launch of a brand new partner. Since one of the motor vehicle insurance companies dropped off from sponsorship a few years back, it's simply been CEP and Central Goldfields Shire. So as of tomorrow, there'll be a new player in town, a really significant partner, an ex-Maryborough resident and EB participant and dual premiership player for the Brisbane Lions, Kai Lohman, will be part of the launch at Holy Cross Independent School tomorrow morning. There was talk of it being on one of the morning TV shows, but that's yet to be confirmed. But I'd love to tell you who it is right now, but it's still embargoed until tomorrow morning. But it's we'll just say they're in the motor vehicle industry, and we're really excited to have them on board. So you'll see a lot of advertising around that as per tomorrow. Brendan, that's the update for today, just on that event. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. As usual, normal housekeeping applies. Today's session will be a 1-hour session and conclude by 5 p.m. The session is being recorded, so people can view the session online at your own convenient time. We have had, I think, at least 20 questions already submitted, but if during today's session there's anybody wanting to ask another question, please include that in the chat box and we'll keep an eye on the chat box. And a final reminder that just before you sign off today, please fill in the online survey, provide some feedback concerning today's session. So I'll now hand over to CEP Manager Morris Billy, who will facilitate today's session. Over to you, Morris.
Thanks, Brendan, and thanks and welcome everybody to the third part in the series. A reminder that a little later on, just before the end today, we'll be getting a taster of next week's session with Dr. Julie Rowse, who's joined us at the recent Small Schools Forum, and she's going to be presenting next week. So we're looking forward to that. We'll hear a bit about that later on today. But first of all, it's great that we've got two amazing experts with us today. Of course, Kristi McVee, who's a child abuse specialist and online safety advisor, has been with us for the last couple of weeks and provided us with amazing content. And we're also lucky enough to have Detective Sergeant Ben McCauley with us today from the Sex Crime Squad as well. So as Brendan mentioned, there's a stack load of questions to get through. So I'm going to just straight away hand over to Kristi, and Kristi and Ben are going to work their way through these questions one by one, and I'm really looking forward to your responses. So, Kristi, over to you, and welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm so excited to be on this third session and to have Ben with me. Ben, I'm going to let you in a minute unmute yourself and share exactly, who you are, where you've been working. I know that we've had a few chats, and I know that Ben's got a range, like a massive lot of wisdom to share and to help you understand. And some of those questions are definitely what Ben's going to be able to answer. So thank you very much. For anyone who wasn't here in the last 2 weeks, we've had such great feedback, 20 questions already. There's going to be time for some more. We'll do our best to get through them all. Some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today are, how do we have these conversations in your community, and what you can do to actually, we can brainstorm and talk about how we can actually start increasing these community standards and increasing safety. I mean, Mark's already mentioned, I'm sure there's some things that have popped up in these sessions where you're like, okay, now we need to make sure that we're covering this. And so the more awareness we have, the better it will be. Inappropriate versus grooming behaviors. Some people just act inappropriately and they just haven't been called on it. And how can we tell if something is inappropriate and someone's just acting inappropriately versus whether they're actually doing something that we would consider as grooming? And then setting expectations as well, and being safe adults. If we set the expectations of what a safe adult looks like, and we help people understand what a safe, and help children understand what safe adults are, that makes it really easy for kids to understand what isn't safe, and for other people to understand when someone is not acting safe. So Ben, just quickly, if you could just explain exactly your history, your many years of police work.
Good afternoon all, and thanks for having me along. Where do I start? I've been in the job since about 2001, worked between country and metro. In the last 6 years, I've spent 4 years at Central Victoria Socket, which is based in the MDC, and work closely with DHS in Bridge Street, Bendigo. And about 2 years ago, I moved down to sex crimes and have been down here since then. So the last pretty much 6 years, I've sort of been in the sex offence child abuse area within Victoria Police. So had a little bit of engagement.
No, just a little bit. I know we underestimate how much experience we have. I know that most people know I did 9 years of child interviewing, and I was a detective for 6. Nothing like your many years. I won't say how many years there've been of policing and detective work, but it's all very much like when you get into this world of child abuse education, or investigation, it's hard, it sucks you in, and it's hard to get back out again. You want to stay there. So
it definitely is. I was never victim orientated investigations for many years, so I went to Socket at Bendigo, and it changed your outlook and perspective on things, and you certainly have the most passionate investigators working in those themes trying to help victims out. So yeah. It's a tough area to work in, but very enjoyable too.
Yeah, I remember someone said, I don't know how you can do it. And I said, because when you do charge someone, and when you do help a victim, a survivor of abuse, it's like it's a massive reward. So I guess let's get started on these questions, and we'll drift in between the two conversations about, having this safety. You're working in rural Victoria, you've had experience working in rural Victoria, and you've had experience having community conversations. So I think one of the things that's been really good in the last few years is we now have child safety standards. And in Victoria is one of the only states that it's actually legislated that they have to follow child safety standards. And I think that's really helped not just community organisations, but schools, anyone with children in their environment. So I think that's really helpful. So one of the questions that I would say is that, Ben, can you elaborate on what you're seeing or what you saw in your investigations? Just give a brief rundown on is there any patterns or things that you're seeing a lot of lately?
Not lately. So I don't have a lot to do now with the child side of things coming down here. But I suppose it comes in all walks, different forms of abuse, of assaults, of threatening behaviours, or it's about identifying it early and engaging the right services and the right processes to report those matters, and then have them actioned in the most appropriate way moving forward, I suppose.
One of the things you've mentioned a couple of times is about mandatory reporting, and there's a couple of questions around mandatory reporting in this document, and I'll tick them off as we go. But if someone's got suspicion that something's going on and they don't have solid evidence, what's your recommendations been in regards to that? Because that's one of the questions where someone has suspicions about a student's behaviours, but there's no actual proof. So is there anything that they should be doing, or what's the process?
I think the old saying, your gut feeling helps a lot too in those scenarios. But if you do have a concern, I recommend you report it through your mandatory reporting processes at the school you're at. And when I say mandatory reporting, that's a report that goes to DHS in the first instance. And through my experience, there's often a lot of cases where teachers or schools would ring directly to socket and it would bypass the DHS phase. But it's really important that DHS are engaged first, because they have a lot of information, intelligence is in the background that they then formulate a report and send through to us as investigators at the local sockets. That additional information then helps us make a better informed decision on whether we need to act immediately. It's something just DHS can roll out, or literally it's a job where we're running out the door to go and help. So it's really important we follow the processes that each school has in place. But it's to DHS first, and then following it, unless there's an immediate concern for safety and welfare, then it's a triple O call.
So in my experience with mandatory reporting, and it might be a little bit different state by state because of different legislation, etc. But and you were talking about running straight out the door and getting. So it used to go into like a screening where you would work out whether that child's in immediate danger of being further abused in that space, or if they're close to their offender, etc. So is that what you're talking about, like triaging?
Yes.
So DHS has to do the triaging, and if you ring socket, then you're going past that triage.
So it really gets triaged in two phases. So the first initial notification goes to DHS. They then put all the information together with initial holdings they already have. So there might be a history, or it might be just that the child comes to school with a red mark on his arm once. Then it comes 3 weeks later, then 5 weeks later, then 10 weeks later. And you're just reporting on that one incident. But that gut feeling goes, there's something more to this. But by sending it to DHS, then we get all the information of all those little notifications that then put the bigger picture together to go, hey, there's something actually happening here. By getting that information, then we make a joint response. So both DHS and McCauley will roll out and speak to the child. And that's also really important, because we don't want the child telling their story over and over again. We want to be told once to the point, get enough information. You go, yes, this now turns into a criminal investigation. So then we can go into what we call VARES, so audio video statements with the child, to get the evidence as the freshest and purest we can without having any sort of influence. So it's really important we work together, have the kids tell the story once, so that then we can build a decent case or a brief of evidence to prosecute if that's the way it goes. We all hope it doesn't, but if it does, we want the best evidence we can get, and that's a way of getting it.
So the recommendation is to, when you put in that mandatory report, to go to DHS where they can corroborate and substantiate all of that evidence that might not have been a criminal investigation to begin with, but it's these little bits of information that adds to the whole story. Is that right?
Yes. So if you've got 5 bits of information about the same sort of offending, and you just ring McCauley with a very latest one, we're missing all that previous intel. And that's the really important one, because obviously it's escalating and getting worse, so we don't want it to get to the next step. So then it turns into an in-person meet and greet with the family and also speak to the child.
And when
and the assessment too. Sorry, I was just going to say, the assessment's also really live and active when you think there's an immediate concern. So if the child's at harm with parents, then it might be a case it's a triple O call, or it's straight to DHS, and they, because of the MDC concept, now I'm not sure if everyone understands what an MDC is, but it's there with DHS workers, counsellors and Victoria Police. So we all work side by side to help our victims, but then also it allows for us a joint response to go and act. And if a child's in danger at home, then we're going to come to the school to speak to that child before they get sent home. And if it's not a parent or guardian or they're not living with, then there's also the process that you need to engage with parents first to get consent to then speak to the child about what's going on. So there's a lot of layers to it, but it's really important that we do the step by step to get the best result at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that was actually what I was about to point out, is that in WA as well, we would, like you said, you would work out what the response was required in that moment, if they're in immediate danger, or maybe they weren't seeing the offender till the weekend, etc. And then you would, build in safeguards around that child to try and keep them safe before they were, had access to that person again. And then, like you said, one interview, one response, so that child's not telling that story over and over and over again. I guess one of the other things that was asked in the questions was, when they do put in a report and they don't get any response, and why is it that they can't find out what's happening? Because, a lot of, especially in small community, they're stressed, that, it adds a lot of stress to the people who are responding, and it also makes them feel like, are they going to know that they told someone, or that they're going to report that they reported it to DHS or to the police? So can you just give some clarity on what happens once it's reported, and are they going to be told who actually put the report?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, even with victims and witnesses, unfortunately, we can't share a lot of information, and that's to protect the integrity of the investigation and not change any evidence and all those sorts of things. You may get a notification that, thank you, we received it and we're looking into it, but it's unfortunate, but we can't say much. So that's probably why there's not a lot of information coming back, and that's purely to protect the victim and the integrity of the investigation.
Yeah, and I know the answer to this because I've been obviously part of this, but do they tell anyone about who's told? Does the offender or the family find out who's put the notification in?
No, so anyone who managed to report is protected by that report. So the details of the author or the person who supplies the information, their identity is protected, and that's the idea of the scheme too. The process to protect you, so people come forward at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah, and one of the things that I said in one of my both presentations, but what I wanted to make sure people were aware of, is that it's not your job as the reporter to investigate. If someone comes to you and says, I think this is happening, or if someone comes to you, if you're a mandatory reporter and you know or have heard something, even if it's secondhand or thirdhand, or if you've witnessed something, you have to report it. It's not your job to find out if it's true or not, or go and investigate the actual allegations. It's actually the police's job to do that. And I think it sometimes people hold off mandatory reporting because they think that, oh, well, I don't have evidence, proof. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sometimes you may think you don't have evidence or don't have proof. However, you may have observed something that is very significant to us. So it could be a black eye, a mark around the neck, or something that you've seen the child's come to school the next day and witnessed that child have certain markings. You may become a witness for the matter, and that's another reason we can't talk or explain much to you about the process of what's occurring behind the scenes. What I can guarantee that there is a lot of people at DHS working on those files. Will be allocated as soon as it comes in and reviewed, so triaged. They will then forward the report off to the sockets. And I know at Bendigo, when I was there, on average, we would get 5 to 7 to 8 notifications a day, and each of those get reviewed. We create investigations for them, whether they're going anywhere or not, and it's all documented. So behind the scenes, we have an investigation shell, so to speak, and all our findings, or what we will put everything in there, whether we proceed with an investigation and go all the way through to court, or it's just a one-off and it's just that first time the recording. And again, we record it so that if it becomes a pattern or a habit of, a pattern of behaviour coming through, we can pick up on those sort of things as well to ensure we can look after and protect the child.
Yeah, and that's leads into one of the other questions that we have on this this big group of questions. Someone said, looking back, there was a child pulled out of school, and when they suggested that there was allied health staff meet with the child, and they put in a referral because they obviously saw that there was some concerning behaviours and patterns and stuff, and then they're worried because they don't have any information over whether this child is safe now. Is there anything you can suggest in relation to that, or is it just, you know, unfortunately we can't give this information out? And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I've said before, the child's safe. It's in hand, and leave it at that. We deliberately don't say much to protect everything, like I've said before. And it's really hard. Like we would love to tell you everything, but it's just not. We're just not able to.
Yeah, I think in this case, I think they went to help a child and the parents pulled them out of the school, and then they've had no information. So they're still concerned about that
Yep.
child's safety. In my experience, I would probably, if you haven't already mandatory reported the fact that you had those concerns, you should put in some sort of either a mandatory report. Well, mandatory report's the best one if you've got details of that. Because I don't know about you, Ben, but in my experience, when parents are resistant to help for their child, it usually shows its potential that there's harm going on in the home. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
I'd probably go your teacher's gut instinct and a welfare of a child, because you know the child, and if something changes, is enough to go, yeah, I might just notify DHS about this. And
Yep.
from an investigative perspective, I look at it and go, I'd rather need it and not have it. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So the information's with us, and then we can review it all the time and it's there. So we're better to have the information and not need it at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I said that as well as an investigator, when I was investigating, if, say, for instance, a report went into, child protection in WA, or a report went into police and nothing happened because it was not substantiated or there was insufficient evidence, but a few years down the track, something else happens, that actually adds to the case. It adds evidence to the case. So even when it seems like there's no point in putting this out, I don't have any evidence, but you don't know what that evidence might actually add to in the long run. And as an investigator, it's gold when you have those little nuggets of information that you can lean back on. There's an old incident report, there's this, there's that, there's a witness that saw something that you can call on for that current investigation. So please don't think that what you're reporting isn't important.
And that's where it may turn into that little bit of gold might be the evidence that gets the second brief over the line. Now, the burden of proof for police is proof beyond reasonable doubt, which is very hard to get to. So that's why all the bits of information we can get over the course of time, we can put it together and run different tendency arguments or bits and pieces of court that help us get a prosecution up. So I encourage, if something just doesn't feel right, put your mandatory report in so it's on the system recorded, and it stays there forever until that child grows past 18. And it's there we see the history every time a DHS notification comes through, so you can go back and read through all those. They're really important.
Cool. So I'll just jump on to, if no one's got any extra questions in regards to that, I'll just jump into some of these other questions that are related to online safety, etc. Some of them, and we'll get them out of the way. So one of the ones was about the Strava exercise app, and it was quite interesting because I think, Ben, you said you hadn't heard of that before. But look, I think with regards to any app that allows messaging in between anyone, it's something that we need to be mindful of, especially when it comes to our children. Anyone can create a fake profile. But the question is Strava is an exercise app. A messaging component was added earlier this year. In early days, I got quite a few messages from fake profiles. However, there haven't been any for months. How vigilant are apps such as Strava in dealing with fake profiles? They're not very vigilant unless there's a lot of complaints and a lot of pushback and people are pulling out of their app or their game. So, I mean, it's really up to the companies, and a lot of them don't put any effort into this at all. So, things like WhatsApp, Instagram, Meta, they're only going to do anything when there's lots of pressure put on them. Similar to the fact that Meta just did all of these new teen restrictions and stuff, added stuff because of the delay ban that's coming in December. They're trying to get out of the ban. So, there's not a lot of safety involved when it comes to these things. That includes, there was another question about WhatsApp. So there was also a question about ChatGPT being used by groomers to be able to work out how to speak and respond to children. Yes, they are. groomers are using AI in order to, and you might be able to add something. I don't know if you've seen any of this, Ben, in your current workplace, but they're using AI to be able to act and behave like children. I mean, groomers and online groomers are really good at acting and behaving like children anyway. I think they revert back to their childhood-like selves, but they use AI now as a way to do that. Have you got anything to add to that, Ben?
I haven't got anything around the grooming side of it. Certainly the intimate image side of things is heavily used with the AI. So, and I think it's only going to become more prevalent moving forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening for a while. I know back in 2020 when I was leaving the police, we all were starting to see the start of it. We're 6 years down the track and it's only gotten better. So it's going to continue until until these apps are banned in Australia, but then that's not foolproof. And, predators are using these apps all the time. One of the questions is, I used to get fake profiles to ask me to go to WhatsApp to chat. Is there common platforms that online groomers try to take you to, or does it vary? WhatsApp and anywhere that there's end-to-end encryption is what they use, because things like Telegram, WhatsApp, Instagram, Meta kindly brought in end-to-end encryption about 2 years ago because they were sick of having to report child abuse material on their platform to the FBI. So, but the main platforms that I know of and that the AFP, etc., speak about are Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Telegram, plus Signal. Discord is, so there's a lot of apps and things. So it's wherever someone tries to take you away from wherever you started, that's definitely a red flag of grooming for anyone that didn't know that already. Have you heard of any others, Ben?
No, I think you've reeled them all off, but they use any application they can.
Yeah, and I did see that the e-safety commissioner has put it, like, there's been a ban put on Omegle, or Omi TV is the current one. How many people have heard of that? Does anyone know what that is? And I can explain it to you if you want to know. I'd love to see if anyone knows what it is. No, some shakes of the head. So Omi TV, or Omegle it was, and then the owner of Omegle shut it down because they couldn't protect it. They couldn't, not protect it, they couldn't do what they needed to do. So Omi TV is basically like it's a chat roulette. So you have your screen, I have my screen, and basically it just like spins the wheel and you get whoever on the other end of the line. So it's become friends with strangers is their tagline. Kids use it on sleepovers, and kids use it just to talk to random people. And in the case of, like, I've been on there to do my own research, but in 10 minutes, I think I saw about 20 dicks. So Session is another app being used by kids. Thanks, Maurice. Yeah, so the thing is that this is basically, a chat app face-to-face. Kids are on there. They think it's funny and hilarious to do it on sleepovers. They're seeing dicks, they're seeing pedophiles and predators on there. It's very much used for that. My daughter thought it was hilarious at 16 to do that whilst they were friends, and she came back and she's like, "Mom, you wouldn't believe what I've just seen." And I was like, "Why do you want to go on there?" And she was like, "Oh, my friends wanted to go on there." So it's very common for sleepovers and stuff like that for kids to use it. So things like that, they've been banned from the Apple Store and Google Store in Australia, but they exist and there's other ones like it. Then that's just one of many. If you've got anything to add, please jump in. Also, small town specific questions. So when you feel uncomfortable about someone in town but don't really have any evidence, is there any advice for school leaders, especially when the adult could be a high profile person in the community? That's a good one. I personally, let's talk about inappropriate versus grooming behaviours. Grooming, we went through the 6 steps of grooming. They find a vulnerable child, they love bomb them, and they basically build a relationship with the child. They isolate them from the person that they're safe adults or other children. Then they sexualize the child, etc. So grooming behaviours are very, very, there's a pattern to them and they're very specific. However, inappropriate behaviours could be also considered grooming behaviours. However, not all inappropriate behavior is grooming, but all grooming starts with inappropriate behaviors. So from my perspective, when I talk about this, it's about the reaction of how, when you call out the inappropriate behavior, how they react. Someone who is genuinely not aware that they're being inappropriate, or they've never been called on their inappropriate behavior before, say for instance, it's silly joke, like inappropriate sexist jokes, or inappropriate, maybe they're touchy-feely and they're constantly, putting their arms around kids or whatever. When you call them out on it, they're either going to go, oh wow, I didn't know that was a problem, I'm sorry, or they're going to get really defensive. And some people who were just being inappropriate will get defensive, but when they actually think about it, they'll apologize, or they'll come back and they won't continue that behavior again. Whereas someone who's grooming, they will deflect, push it back on you. You're overreacting. Don't be silly. I'm just being nice. And that's my experience with groomers. So it can be a bit of a shuffle, and I will put a link in a second to a blog that I wrote about this. So it's about when you call it out. So, and it could be just something simple like, hey, that's inappropriate. We're not meant to touch kids. Hey, they didn't ask for to have a hug. Is there a reason why you're hugging? Or speaking to the child outside of that experience, maybe, hey, I noticed that you're getting a hug from Kristi. Was that okay by you? Or, is that something that happens often? Because sometimes we might think, it's about checking in with every party. Ben, have you got anything to add to that?
No, nothing additional to that.
Have you got
your
any?
Gut tells you a lot generally.
Sorry, what's that?
I was going to say again, I'm just referring back to your gut feeling when you see that person or that incident or that. I think we all know, and it's about having the confidence to speak up, say something, knowing your identity is protected. If it is that high-profile person in a community, that you can do a mandatory report and go through and do necessary inquiries. And I'll just reflect it. Imagine if there's 3 other teachers all thinking the same thing, see 3 different incidents and don't report it. So the 3 reports might come in and we go, there's something to this. So it starts more inquiries from an investigative avenue, and maybe you can prevent something from happening before it does. So I encourage you to report, rely on your gut and go with it, and report it through your mandatory reporting process, and let us then deal with the consequences on the other end of it. And hopefully it's sooner rather than later to stop something from happening if it is accurate. And if it's not, that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to know that you put that report in other than the police or your child protection DHS. And the other thing is that you just don't know what evidence or what little bit of information fills in the whole of that investigation. So, and I think the main thing is what does a safe adult really means? Someone who's safe around children is someone who's going to consider their bodily autonomy, who's going to listen and believe children. They're not going to ask them to keep secrets, and they don't guilt them into anything. They don't single out other children, which is one of the MOs of like grooming. They are always, appropriate around them. And so when we look at those behaviors, that makes it really easy to identify when someone's not acting appropriately. And then, can I clarify, if it is a teacher that is observed to be behaving inappropriately, what would be utilize the reportable conduct scheme rather than reporter? Do you know directly about that, Ben? If someone's acting inappropriately and a teacher, would they go through the reportable conduct scheme rather than the mandatory reporting scheme?
In the first is I'm assuming there would be a process within each school on how to report that matter initially to then escalate it. And it's also important you follow your own school guidelines first, and then it progresses to your mandatory reporting side of it.
Yeah, I think that's in the best case scenario. If that person happens to be someone of authority, do you think that it would be the best? Because I know sometimes this is the thing about people who do the wrong thing. They can be in positions of authority and you don't have power over that. So yeah, I'm not sure, Christine, if that's answered your question, but I think the main thing is to follow your school policy. But if that person is a person in a position of power and authority and you're not sure, I would then circumvent that and go directly to mandatory reporting.
Yeah, totally agree, Kristi. Yep.
Sorry, what was that, Mark?
There was just an earlier question about what platform you would recommend. children to
What?
use some platform?
None.
I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. What app would you recommend?
So what platform?
Yeah, platform. Would you recommend students to use, young people to use to communicate with each other?
I'd jump in and say none.
Right.
Unfortunately, but I know that's not realistic or possible.
No, that's right. What platform do you recommend for young people to use? Well, at the moment, to talk to each other, I would go back to the good old iMessage. Because I mean, it's direct to direct conversations. There's not many, and even there's not many apps out there. When we sign up to social media, any social media, we are giving away all of our rights to anything that happens in that app, and that's what the companies, they're selling out information, they're selling your kids information. And also there's no way to keep them safe if you can't see what's happening. I think it's really important. I think I made back when I talked about this in the first week, I made it pretty clear that, we need to have, if they're going to use an app, you need to be in and know what's going on in that app. With the delay in the ban going on, I think, they're not going to have, some kids aren't going to have access to Instagram, Snapchat, and the others. So back to good old iMessage is probably my best thing. All right, where's the other questions? So small town, a very small town in a rural community, how do we have these discussions with students when they have limited interest in online, but we know this will change as they transition into secondary school? I guess that one's for me. It's really important that we have these conversations before they actually are online or doing anything. So we're going to have those body safety conversations if we haven't, or, in the school environment. And then we're also Android phones. Yeah, I'll answer that in a second, Sally. We're going to start with body safety conversations. What is private versus public? What is, safe and unsafe? What's appropriate and inappropriate? And then, before they get to high school, we're going to be talking about, if anyone ever, hopefully you remember what my thing was, is has anyone ever, or have any of your friends ever had a video or photo of someone's private sent to them? What could kids do if? And we're going to have those conversations with the kids in our little schools or in our little communities. I think, do you know what? I really love little rural communities. If you've got 30 kids in your school total, that's the best. I reckon they probably have the best time, those kids. So yeah, I recommend, having conversations around body safety leading up into your online safety conversations, because if they know what unsafe is and unsafe feels like, an inappropriate and private versus public, then they're going to know you can introduce that online safety message in that conversation in the next case. So okay, what is the impact on children and young people who have been taken advantage of in the classroom? How can we help with engagement? We tend to look less into this space as our young people become adolescents and young adults, but it is even more important that we do. I'm thinking this question's in regards to they've already been groomed online or abused, maybe, and how to have conversation or how to support them best. Ben, are you aware of what support services are in Victoria for young people, and is it still a child protection referral if you wanted some help or some counselling for a young person?
It'd be a good start. We can certainly, as police officers, can make referrals for people to help with those sorts of things. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. There is certainly some child-specific ones, but sorry, off the top of my head, I can't recall them. Yeah,
and in my case, I would say that it's a personal experience as well as when dealing with children when I was a police officer and in my child's circles, is that it's helping kids feel safe. So when kids feel safe, and being that person that they can come to if they need to, and identifying, hopefully you've got the school counselling service or a chaplain or etc. But if you're that person that child feels safe with, then nurture that relationship so that child can have it, because you're that safe person, and that's an honor when children can come to you and share what they need to share with. If it's already been investigated and they're, you know, they've been removed from the environment and there's no active investigations, then it's about supporting them and giving them somewhere safe to. If it hasn't been reported, then obviously you're going to go down that mandatory reporting pathway. So it's about being that safe person. I think, you know what, I've just got to give it to you, your community of teachers and adults. It is really important. You guys have got a massive job to do in regards to, you know, supporting your kids in your communities, and just how much you have on your shoulders. I know it must be hugely daunting at times. So yeah, I applaud you. I mean, I came from a small community growing up in Port Hedland, if anyone knows where that is, and my I grew up with some alcohol abuse and neglect and physical abuse, etc. And my teachers were amazing. They knew that it was going on. We didn't have mandatory reporting back then in the 80s and 90s. Probably in the 90s they did, but you know, I was able to go to them and they were able to support me. So don't ever underestimate how important you are to those kids that need you. Okay, so
I was going to say on that, in the context of family violence scenario where the child may be injured or hurt, there's certainly the Orange Door now. An Orange Door is set up in Bendigo and Maryborough, but that's certainly set up in a lot of locations around Victoria. And they are a very valuable resource with a lot of support agencies within there, or able to connect you to the right people.
Yeah, and you know, if I was in your situation in small community, I would get to know your child protection officers, and I'd get to know your other services and create like some form of collaboration, because you're going to need them, and having them so that you can contact, or you know, even speaking to your local police and staff. Most small communities are that close, but you just never know. Ben, have you got any ideas on this one? When you get a single parent who starts talking about a new partner, usually the boyfriend, and there are red flags, where do you sit in this situation? How much should you get involved, and what does the conversation look like, and how can we best manage it? Have you got any ideas on that one?
Again, listen to what the child's saying and take notes and your observations. And I'm saying body language, reactions, injuries, all those sorts of things. And if you see those changes, I would err on the side of caution, just put a notification through. So it's recorded. Again, be proactive in that space. Your gut's telling you something's not quite right for a reason. So.
Yeah. And that's a good point. You know, like if red flags are showing to you, then there's definitely listen to it. You never, like, red flags are there for a reason. And if I was to have a conversation, it would probably be with the child, not the adult, because unless the adult showed, you know, was looking to talk to someone, I would be talking to the child. I'd be like, how's home going? What's happening with mum? You know, that kind of thing. If I was concerned and there wasn't any signs, but if there's physical signs, or even, I would definitely report it.
If you go down that line, just open-ended questions to find the answers is probably really important. Not trying to put answers out there within the question you ask. So just an open-ended question and see where that takes you.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of what open-ended, like, tell me more about that. You know, you can always, it's not going to be a forensic interview anyway. Police, obviously, and they're going to do the forensic interviewing. But, you know, you could always say, how's everything going? And if they mention something, like, tell me more about that. Oh, explain to me how that works. So use tell me, explain to me, describe for me, show me. So if use those TED questions to just let them open up the conversation, and then hopefully, you know, but even if in that one conversation they say nothing, just keep coming back to the child and going, how's everything going? Like, you know, be that person that they can come to. I know that adds a lot of weight to you, and you've probably got all these other kids to worry about, but sometimes it just takes one adult or one safe adult to, like, have that conversation with at the right time, and the child will say something, and it might protect them. In a community,
it's a catch. Sorry, can I jump in there for a sec? It is a real catch though too. The open-end question is really important, but as soon as that child discloses an offence or something serious to you, as an investigator, we need you to stop and not ask any more probing questions about it. Don't push the point. And I know that's natural. We all want to know more. But if you have a child that explains something that's very serious and it's clearly a criminal offence, I ask that you just stop at that point, reassure the child it's going to be okay, and then start the mandatory process reporting to occur, so then police and DHS can get engaged straight away. Again, that just comes back to limiting the number of times the child tells their story so we get the best chance of a prosecution down the track.
Yeah, good point. And some of the things that I would have said, or you can say, is what you've told me is really important. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm just going to have to, and you can tell them, look, what you've told me is so important it's our job to keep you safe. So I'm going to just go and tell someone. And then you obviously support them the best way you can without going into it any further.
Yeah, it's really hard not to go further. But I fast forward all the way to when we've got the matter before a trial, and we've got a defence barrister trying to suggest that someone's put wording into their mouth. And that's why I say that. So it protects the child, it protects the witness. You get the information, stop there, and pass it on to the appropriate people. So,
I was some of the questions in regards to, in a community setting, when children spend time with extended or blended family members, such as step-grandparents whom their parents may not know well yet, what guidance can schools provide to families around safety? Oh, interesting. That one's in regards to, because on last week, Ben, we talked about, 1 in 4 Australian children will be sexually abused. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 5 boys is the current statistics at the Australian Child Maltreatment Study. And, in regards to that, obviously over 90% of child sexual abuse is by someone known to the child. Yep. So it's not, that's what we went through last week. And I think what we're seeing is that, a lot of the community are not aware of those kinds of statistics. We're still talking about stranger danger, etc. So for them, I think schools can provide to families around safety. I think hosting safety information sessions with people like myself, or with the with other organisations, sharing information. Are you aware of any kind of public safety messaging that you can share in Victoria? Or I can probably put up some information.
Now, Victoria Police used to regularly get out in schools, and I sort of think it dipped away a little bit, but it's certainly there are still people that engage directly with the schools, and sometimes they're the best people just to come out. One, to build confidence and faith in police officers, that they're trustworthy, and for kids to come and see, but then also for them to engage with the teachers, either at the school or however it may be. So I think getting to know your local community coppers and engage with them and get them along to the school is certainly a good thing.
That used to be my favourite thing when I was in community policing. Well, I wasn't in community policing, but when I was in community, is going out and doing my little trip out to the kindergarten kids or the other kids, and taking the police car, and they had to look at everything. That was one of my favourite things. So don't doubt that. I know police are busy, but sometimes there's 1 or 2 coppers there that love that stuff. So they'll come out if you ask them to.
And I know we talk about Maryborough, but I know there's a couple of coppers at Maryborough. There was one definitely directly involved with it. I haven't been at Maryborough for quite some time, so I'm not sure if they're still there, but I would like to think there's still direct engagement with a member with the schools and a copper. So simply give the local station a call and find out if you don't have one.
Yeah, and we've only got a few more minutes. Is there any, what I'll do is, for everyone that's on the call, I will answer the whole document, and I'll put in a quick couple of sentence to answer all of those documents, and then Maddie can send it out. But is there any other questions, direct questions? What about kids who have Android phones? Again, messages. But look, WhatsApp's a good one. But the only thing, when we deal with apps and you don't have access to those apps, then you're not going to be able to see if your child's being bullied or groomed. So this is my biggest concern with, and again, I think it's really important that we set up expectations for our children when we give them a phone or device, that we have access to them. I'm sure Ben can agree with me, is that no good happens when we don't have access to what's happening. It's crazy to me that we give a device to our kids and we hands off automatically. We wouldn't put them in a playground, or we wouldn't, we ask them questions all the time about how's your day at school, but yet we don't check who's bullying them or grooming them in their online world. So it's really important we set up expectations for our kids that this device, this thing that we're giving you is actually on loan until you pay the bills. And so it is as your parent, it's my job to make sure you're safe, and I'm going to be able to look after this. If you can't do that, then you don't get that device. And I'm sure Ben will agree with me on that. Most police officers have the same opinions around that. So yeah, if anyone has any quick questions that we can answer straight away, otherwise I will get that document answered and sent back to everyone. And there was one question about Facebook and Messenger groups for families where parents shared loads of kids' photos. Are there any concerns of the practice given most perpetrators are known to students? What can we do to help? We can't tell who's attracted to kids. They don't walk around with a big sign on their head saying pedo. So it's really hard. We're just going to have to trust that our family members are going to do the right things. Hopefully they're not going to do the wrong things. We also need to be mindful that it could be anyone. It's not everyone, but it can be anyone. So just don't think we don't want to think everyone's out there to harm kids, but we also want to be mindful that there is people in our lives that could. So Mark's put one last, in your experience, do children generally say they have a teacher they can trust to talk to? Yes, when I was interviewing kids, teachers were up high, especially if they were good teachers, they were high up there on their list of 5 people. And some kids, if they're coming from a home where they don't have safe adults in the home, they would often say teachers, chaplains, someone in that, like their coach at basketball, if someone was helping them or like supporting them emotionally at school, yeah, definitely teachers are very important in kids' development. I can't say that enough. Have you got anything to add to that, Ben?
No, I totally agree. No.
Yeah, I think you don't realize how important you are, and that's why it hurts so much when a teacher or someone who we trust with kids lets us down and abuses kids, because I don't think there's anyone who goes into this the average person who goes into teaching and being a part of education doesn't go in to hurt kids. They go in because they love and want to support kids, and they want to do their best because one teacher probably made them feel really good as a kid and they wanted to be like that teacher or something like that. So, be that person that protects kids, stands up to other adults who doesn't, report where possible. And just remember, it's not your job to investigate. It's just your job to support. So I think we're nearly done in time, and
Yes.
I don't want to keep going. So,
Kristi, you've done an amazing job covering off the majority of those questions and giving such an in-depth conversation and insight into this world. And with Ben's support, I think it's been absolutely amazing. And I think, without speaking on behalf of CEP, this space continues to evolve, and I reckon we could touch base again early next year, and there'd be a whole bunch of other stuff that we could bring to the table that's new that we will talk about in terms of young people. So just on behalf of everybody at CEP and all those people, I'd like to thank you, Kristi, for your time over the last 3 weeks. It has been amazing. I think it's the beginning of a beautiful relationship that we will go forward in this space. And Ben, thank you for your time as well. It's been awesome. So there was a Halloween costume just popping up behind Ben there. That frightened me.
No, someone was putting his jacket on. I don't think the police are going out on the road in their Halloween
costumes. It was a Halloween costume. Thanks again, and you can take a deep breath now, and we really appreciate your time. Just in the couple of minutes we've got left, I just wanted to give a quick introduction to Dr. Julie Rowse, who's going to be our guest speaker next week. We were lucky enough to have Julie on board for the Small Schools Forum a few weeks ago, and she's amazing with her work in this space, particularly when we're talking about the sessions next week that she is going to run. Julie, welcome on board. And yeah, would you like to give us a bit of a taste on what you'll be presenting to us next week?
Thanks for having me. It's hard to follow such an amazing topic of child safety. I think one of the things where I do tie in the session next week is around coaching. So I think school principals, teachers in school leadership have a really tough job, and we can sometimes forget the importance of actually looking after you. So whilst we've talked a lot today about looking after our young people and how important that is, we know that there's a lot of pressures in schools, there's a lot of challenges. And so next week, I'm going to be talking a little bit about coaching. I've written a book called The Mentally Fit Leader. And so I'll be talking a little bit about that, and I'll have a few giveaways so people can get some tips from my book. I'll talk a bit about whether we're surviving or thriving and some of the strategies and ways of helping people move to being able to look after yourself in the space, whatever you're dealing with in your particular school. So I look forward to being a part of it next week.
And a little bit about your amazing work in the Lego therapy space. Will you be touching on that?
I can do. I talked about that. It's been lovely, actually. So I do support schools to set up Lego therapy, and I've had some great conversations with some of the small schools around Victoria since the Small Schools Conference. I've probably talked to nearly a dozen maybe, which has been really exciting. So I'm looking forward to helping some of the schools to set up Lego therapy programs to help students with social communication difficulties and help them to be able to do things like ask for help, be able to give a verbal narrative of what's happening for them. And I've been out at a school today, actually earlier today, with their team of ES who are running Lego therapy in the school, and they are so excited. There's a number of children who are now able to say hello and share what's happening to them, ask for help. So it's really exciting to see different students be able to build their own confidence in being able to engage with people, which is really important when we're talking about child safety. Is if a child can't ask for help or can't verbalise what's happening, it places them at greater risk. So being able to have programs in our schools to build skills for students and to be able to verbally let people know what's going on is so important. So Lego therapy is a really great program for that, and certainly happy to talk about that as well.
Julie, thank you. As I acknowledged before, I've known Julie for a long time, and we go way back, and she's an amazing practitioner, an amazing person to be involved with. So I'm really looking forward to next week's session and hearing more from Dr. Julie Rowse. And again, join us, because you'll be thoroughly entertained, but you'll also be given lots of amazing strategies and stuff. Julie got the death shift at our recent conference, and she did an amazing job right at the end there while everyone was sort of just starting to drift off, and she did a great job. So Julie, see you next week. Thanks again to Kristi and to Ben for joining us today. Thanks to everyone who's joined us online today, and to those who will be listening to this. And on that note, with time ticking away, I'll hand over back to Brendan.
Thanks very much, Morris. Can I also thank our presenters today. Next week's session is the 4th in the summer series, and in fact it's the last session for this year. I'll remind everybody that the poll is now available in the chat box, so use the link in the chat box to complete today's poll. We're happy to receive further questions concerning today's session. So if you want to include those in the chat box or email directly to CEP, then we'll follow up those questions. There's been 3 terrific sessions over the last few weeks. So thank you to everybody that has participated in those sessions. And that concludes today's session. Bye for now.